Welcome to the Work in Between, the podcast where we explore the topics and daily actions that get us to our health related goals. I'm your host, Gretchen Holmes, and I'm really excited that you're here today. My guest today is Melanie Borden, managing member of the Borden Group, a marketing consulting group who helps transform businesses and executive teams with branding on all sorts of social media and LinkedIn. And Melanie, welcome to the show. I am so excited to hear your story.
Thank you for having me.
We met on LinkedIn, as many of us do, and I have really gotten to know so many amazing people, and you are one of them. And I came across not just the professional work that you do, but your own personal health journey that I found was really interesting. And I think a lot of people will really relate to some of the challenges that you've gone to. So I'm really looking forward into hearing what happened. Where did you get to the point where you realized you had to make some changes? Because I know there's a lot of really busy people out there with a lot of competing priorities, and it's sometimes hard to put ourselves first. So where did your awareness come about?
It's a great question. It's a loaded question because there's so much that has happened to get me to this point. So I had originally started my business as just me being a solopreneur and consultant. And I never wanted to say no to anyone who had reached out who wanted to hire me. And I just kept saying yes to all projects. And flash forward, I started building an agency, but I was also working anywhere between, we'll say 12 and 17 hours a day. And I really started neglecting myself. And I started just not taking care of myself, which was something that I had always done. I'd always maintained, exercise and eating well. And I really just let it go. And I was really just more, and I was not sleeping. And I was really more focused on getting work done for my clients than I was with keeping myself healthy. So last year in November of 22, I started feeling like I was having a heart attack. And I started having all the symptoms of a heart attack. I was having chest pain. I was having, a lot of anxiety around that. And I went to the hospital, and it turned out that I wasn't having a heart attack, but I was having a panic attack or anxiety attack. But it opened up the door for me to have all these conversations with my doctor about my lifestyle and how I was maintaining, or I should say lack of maintaining. And it was just an eye-opening experience that I really had no intention of it happening, but it happened. So it just turned out that I was eating really poorly. I wasn't sleeping. Even like with my own children, I wasn't really as present as I should have been. And it started this journey for me where I just took control of every single thing in my life. And it all really started with me. And I never looked at it that way. I always thought, okay, I don't necessarily need to put myself first to take care of all these other things that I have to do. But what ended up happening was once I started taking care of myself, everything else in my life started thriving. And here we are today talking about it.
I think it's a common theme, right? That we tend to put other people first. We put our kids first, or our spouses, our jobs. And I also think sometimes, especially when you're building a new business, it's easy to get kind of addicted to the I suppose the dopamine and the rush of more and more and more success until our bodies decide to say enough. We can't do that anymore. And I also think we get so caught up in it that we really can't see through it. When we receive bad news, like you received, and you finally realized what was going on, sometimes we get really overwhelmed and we don't know where to start. So where did you start, and how did you figure out what to do first?
That's a great question. So I have a very close family. I'm very close to my parents. I also have a partner who's very much a big part of the journey that I've been on with health and wellness. And, talking with him and having a deeper conversation about what to do next and kind of speaking it into existence versus just being overwhelmed with the information, which was, you've got all these issues that are happening that are related to your current lifestyle and how to kind of unwind what you've created. So starting with my general practitioner, going and getting blood work to see if there was anything else that they didn't test for when I was at the hospital, when they did blood work, and they did the EKG on me. And just making sure, I know this is something, especially as women and moms, I have a lot of friends that don't go to a general practitioner. They don't go to an OBGYN once a year. They don't take care of themselves because they're doing all these things. And I definitely, over the last couple of years, fell within that category. So really realizing that I need to take care of myself, because if I get sick or if something is massively wrong with me, which fortunately, knock on wood, nothing was, like to the point of, anything that was fatal. But when that happened, it made me realize, like, oh my God, like I really need to be taking better care of myself, because if something happens to me, who's going to take care of all these other things that I'm responsible for? Who's going to care for my kids? Who's
Right.
going to pay my mortgage? Who's going to do all the things that I do? So just really starting with that, with just saying, okay, like making a list of everything that I had to take care of, including setting doctor's appointments, and something as small as like going to the dentist and just
Yeah.
making sure these things that we neglect to do because we're so focused in the moment.
Mhm.
I also started an elimination diet. And so my doctor essentially said to start eliminating certain foods that I felt were giving me inflammation.
Ah, okay.
So I stopped eating dairy. I stopped eating gluten. I
Mhm.
stopped eating eggs. And then I would slowly try to bring them back. And then my body would react in a certain way. That's an alternate route of doing the at-home test, like the Everly Wells or the other tests that you can do to test for sensitivities. I'm highly sensitive to lactose, which was something I didn't realize. I'm also highly sensitive to eggs.
Oh.
And just removing them from my diet has helped me so much with just how I feel on a day-to-day basis. The other thing I did is I invested in a Peloton bike.
Mm.
It's something that I was always really wanted to do, and I had never really done it. I started working out with the Peloton bike, and Peloton is so amazing because they have all kinds of different classes that you can take, not just the bike. They have strength training, they have yoga, they have meditation, they have all different types of, they have stretching, they also have guided running. And so I really got very much into working out, and it took time. It didn't happen right away, but it did take discipline of me every morning getting up before my kids got up and saying, okay, I'm forcing myself to get on the bike for an hour, or I'm forcing myself to do yoga for an hour, or I'm forcing myself to do it just to instill the discipline. And then when I was able to achieve taking the class, I would reward myself with like a nice coffee or something from Starbucks, or I would create a reward for myself. And that worked very well for me. And I know it works very well for children. It also works really well for adults, is creating that reward system.
Mhm.
And I started getting back into running, which is something that I had always done growing up. I did it all through my pregnancies. I used to run races. I ran cross country in high school. And during the pandemic, when I was stressed out and drinking a lot and just eating everything in sight, I stopped running. And to me, running was always a way, it was an outlet for me to just think, and, an alternate version of therapy, not a replacement for, but I started running on a regular basis. And I started with doing guided runs, with having an instructor telling me what to do and how to do it. It started with just interval training. And then, now today, like yesterday, I just ran 10 miles.
Ah,
So
congratulations.
thank you. So just having that outlet of exercise, and I would just feel so good when I was done running, and when I was running and working out. And I also started going to see a therapist, which was something
Mhm.
that I also hadn't done. I had done therapy in the past when I was going through a divorce,
Mhm.
but I had stopped, and just kind of restarting it to reprioritize and focus on myself was
Mhm.
really important. And I actually encourage everyone I know to go into therapy, because I think it's really helpful for anything. It could be help just talking strategies through a situation, not a business coach, but an actual therapy who can listen to you and make suggestions. And, I've just loved being in therapy. And then also, really just trying to have guidelines for myself with work. And that's the hardest part for me, is knowing, okay, I'm not working after 6 o'clock at night, or I'm going to make it my point where I'm not going to email anybody after 7 o'clock at night, or having those guidelines set up. And there are things that come up from time to time that you can't control. And like, there are some nights where we have a deadline and we have to hit it, and I'm working at midnight. It still
Yeah.
happens occasionally, but it's not happening 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that in place for myself, and just knowing like, it's okay, I'm still going to be able to get everything done. I'm still great at what I do. If I get fired because I'm not working at midnight, then that's not the ideal client for me, because they don't understand a work-life balance. And I'm a parent, and I'm also an individual who needs to, focus also on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not selfish to do that. It's actually self-care.
It is. And that's where I think a lot of people, including myself, get a little confused about what self-care even means. For some reason, we tend to think it's very selfish, but it's not. We deserve to have a high quality life. We deserve to be healthy. We deserve to take good care of ourselves, just as much as we want to help other people do that. I think it's interesting for me. It was hard for me to ask others to be supportive of the changes I needed to make, even though if they had asked me, I'd have been all in. I'd have been totally fine with it. But for some reason, it's kind of hard for me to ask somebody to be a support system. But we all need support, right? We can't do this all on our own.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to have a support system. And for me, I think the hardest part is accepting support. And that's
Yes.
been
Yeah.
very hard, whether it's accepting support with my kids,
Mhm.
accepting support with my business, and just accepting support in general, that no, it's not possible for one person to do everything. I'm not superhuman. No one
Right.
is. And just
Right. Yeah. And I also think it's really important to model for our children, for our employees, for friends, whatever, what healthy boundaries look like, what
yes.
healthy behaviors look like, how how it's okay to take care of yourselves and to say no to things, which brings me to my next question, which is, it's all great when we start putting all of these things in place. So we're going to work out every day or 3 times a week or whatever it is, and we're going to eat healthfully, and we're going to go to therapy, and it's all great until other stuff starts to creep in there and start competing for those things we have in place. And so how do you protect that so that you can continue on your healthy journey that you have built?
It's not easy.
No, no, it's not.
It's really, really difficult, but when you do it enough, like anything, it becomes a lot easier. So I have learned to say no, where in the past, when I would say yes to everything, I have learned to really own the word no, and to stop explaining myself of why I eat a certain way, why
Yes.
I do things a certain way. I don't owe, no one owes anyone an explanation for anything that we do. And, I've experienced it a lot, specifically with going out to eat at restaurants
Mhm.
and also holidays. So I come from a very big Jewish family where if you don't eat, it's like an insult to someone if you're not
Yeah.
eating the things that are actually would give you a heart attack.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that I would say that's been the hardest part for me, is going to family functions and not eating certain things. I would say that would be that's the most challenging part for me. But restaurants, I know immediately if I eat something, if they didn't follow my instructions of, don't put dressing on it, or is there egg in this? Is there raw egg in it? Is there dairy in this? If I would find out instantly because I'm so used to eating a certain way that my body reacts and I know. But it's definitely, you know, going to parties and I just have to prepare. So for example, one of my neighbors is having a big New Year's party for our entire neighborhood. And we have tons of kids in my neighborhood, and all the kids are pretty much between the ages of 4 and 10.
Mhm.
And, you know, everyone's planning on what they're bringing. And I was looking at the list of all the different foods, and it's just everything is just so not anything I can eat or want to eat. And
Yes.
so, you know, everyone has to bring an appetizer and a dessert. And so, of course, like I'm bringing fruits and vegetables and a protein because for me, it's what I can eat. I feel
Mhm.
comfortable with it, and I don't feel that I need to explain anything. And, you know, if I go to I don't always drink when I go out. I don't really like how I feel if I drink too much. So
Mhm.
a lot of times I'll just drink a club soda with lime or with lemon. And even when I go out to eat, it's the same thing. But I feel in the beginning, it's always hard. Everything is hard in the beginning to have discipline. But when it's something that you really want and it's how you want to live, it becomes easier because it's what you need to have. And I know discipline is very difficult for so many people, for myself too, when I first started, but I just kept thinking about the alternate, which is going back to what I was doing and getting the same result, which is what Albert Einstein did say, if you do the same thing over and over again, it's the definition of insanity if you think it's going to change.
Right. Right.
So it's the same concept with, you know, living a healthy lifestyle. And of course, there's times that, you know, I cheat on my, you know, I don't even like to say cheating because it's really, to me, I make a choice. And if it's something that I want to feel like not great after eating a certain way, then that's a choice that I made.
Right.
Um, but I think that everything in moderation is really important. And in the US, I just think that there's such a big problem with oversized portions and everything that people are eating that, you know, my world revolves around food. But to me, it's this, or it would be the alternate, which was unhappy, overstressed, overweight, and possibly having further issues that would really damage the longevity of my life and would impact everybody else around me.
Yeah. It's really important, I think, to make sure that we all understand that it's about consistency. It's not about perfection. We're not
Totally.
robots. We can't be perfect all the time. We can't, I mean, we might tie together 6 fantastic days of great exercise and workouts and fantastically delicious, nutritious meals. And then maybe on Sunday something happens. And then we go, well, I blew it. I'm going to have to, I might as well eat and not even work out. And that all or nothing mentality really gets in the way because we all have to build lifestyles. And this is very cliche, but it's so important. We have to build lifestyles that are sustainable, that are doable, that taste good, feel good, can be integrated into our everyday lives.
Yeah.
Because if we're too strict, too structured, sometimes we don't have the flexibility to do what we need to do. And then for those of us with all or nothing thinking, then it tends to derail us. So I think, you know, I'm constantly tweaking everything that I'm doing. This worked last year, but for some reason it's not working this year. So I might have to try something a little bit different. And I expect that you probably have had to do some tweaking along the way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So in September, I was actually introduced to this woman who is a health and wellness coach, and she's also a personal trainer. So I had gotten to the point where I was working out a lot. Like I was overly working out to the
Mhm.
point where I hurt my knee from overusage, to give you
Ah,
an example. And so I wasn't, so in August, I stopped running. And then prior to August, I was probably trending around 75, 80 miles a month that I was running.
mhm,
And so the problem that I was having is I wasn't eating enough to sustain the amount of energy that I was burning. And that was part of why I burned out my knee,
mm,
because my body just had enough. So I hired this woman. Her name is Christine Lavopa. And I had met her actually through her husband, who's an active duty vet, and he's in the Navy right now. And
mhm,
I had met him through somebody else I knew on LinkedIn. And her and I had just actually connected to talk about her LinkedIn. And she was talking to me, and I was interviewing her to hire her because I felt that I needed something else to take me to the next level, to take care of myself, because I felt I wasn't getting the wellness that I needed. I wasn't getting the nutrition I needed. And I needed something more than just what I had read about and what I had learned about through the internet. I needed someone who had the expertise that could help me. And she was also a nutritionist. And so I started working with her, and we're still working together now. And I started working with her, and she really opened my eyes to a lot, including, as women, the men that are listening, I mean, it applies to them too, especially if there's a woman in their life.
Sure.
But there's a lot that you can do around your menstrual cycles.
Mhm.
And you can actually, it's called cycle syncing, where you actually sync your workouts based on the time of the month, essentially. And each different phase is a different type of workout that you're doing. And this is something that was so foreign to me that I had never heard of. And it's so accurate. And it also has really helped me a lot. And what's interesting is I'm probably eating 2 times as much as I was before. And I've leaned out and I feel great. And I've just, like I said earlier, I just ran 10 miles and my knee feels amazing. So I'm back to where I wanted to be, but I wouldn't have been able to get there without asking for help from someone else because it wasn't my expertise. This isn't what I do, but
Yeah.
it's a place that I wanted to go.
Yeah, I think again, I don't know why we have so much trouble asking for help, but there is so much help out there. There are so many people who are experts or have a lot of experience in these areas that can help get us to the next level. They can help us get started. Again, I think it can be really overwhelming when people get bad news like you did to even think about where to start. And we can't do everything at once. So it's, maybe just starting to make one change
Yeah.
and see how that goes, right? And then maybe start building on that. I think many of us are guilty of too much too soon. And then we overdo it and then we don't go back to doing it. But it sounds like you did a really good job of building this new environment, this new lifestyle. How has your family responded?
It's been great. I mean, both of my kids are very active.
Mhm.
They're 9 and 10 years old. And, my 10-year-old actually, since I started running again, actually runs with me. And she's involved in this organization in Northern New Jersey called Girls on the Run.
Ah,
And so it's been such a positive outlet for her too, because now we can share that. We can go on
yeah.
vacation or, in the summertime when it's warm out, we can run together. And
Mhm.
that's something that I used to share with my dad. That's how I got into running, is I used to run with my dad. So it's
Mhm.
something that I can now share with her. So she's been super positive. They don't really like that I don't buy the same types of foods anymore. So they get that when they go to their dad's house.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
they love, eating healthy and having healthy foods and snacks because it just makes you feel good and it makes you feel better. And there's definitely, of course, like they're kids. So we go to the movies, they get what they want, but
yeah,
it's, having the moderation for them, I think is really important because I know for myself growing up, like in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't exactly, the healthiest, most nutritious food that people were really focused on eating. So it's a totally different world now. So I think it's actually very cool for kids who are growing up now with parents who are more focused on, wellness and their, healthy lifestyle
yeah,
versus, I mean, look, I turned out fine. So everything that my parents fed me was great.
yeah.
But it's just a different mindset. It's just there's more options now because social media and the internet has just created so much more awareness that it just wasn't available then.
Yeah. I like that that you've been able to create some really important balance, right? So that not only are you able to get your work done, but you're also able to spend time with your kids and with your partner and but also with yourself. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day and we got to sleep in there somewhere. So it's important to take a little bit of time for yourself as well, to regroup, to meditate, to journal, just breathe, just take a
Yeah.
moment and be it slows some things down, and it sounds like you've got a pretty well balanced life now.
Yeah, I mean, now when when I'm having a stressful day or something's going on, I now will be like, okay, mom's going downstairs. I'm going to walk on the treadmill. Instead
Mhm.
of having a glass of wine or two, I walk on the treadmill for 45 minutes or an hour, even if I've already worked out that day, because it just makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Or I walk outside and I have my kids. I mean, something that I wasn't doing a lot of was, after dinner, going for a walk with my
Yeah.
kids. And that is something that they love because then they're outside and it's later and they can be on their bikes or walking. Now living in northern New Jersey, it's kind of not the best weather right now this time of year, but having those healthy options available to do and just knowing how to set boundaries. And that is the hardest part, is just setting boundaries and setting them with everyone, including yourself.
Yeah. And putting our phones down.
Oh yeah, that's a tough one for me because
Me
I
too.
live
Ugh,
I live on the internet.
yeah. Now, and I like this, when you connect with nature, there's all sorts of research out there that shows that that is rejuvenating, right? It provides you with a lot of those energy producing experiences that make you not only feel better, but you breathe and you walk. And I found, when I was growing up, the times that I could talk the most easily with my parents or my siblings was when we were walking.
Yeah.
And so the conversations are more focused. Now, back then we didn't have cell phones, but even now it instills in our kids how to have conversations and connect one on one,
Yeah.
because they have to. And I think that's such an incredibly important skill and time with each other.
Yeah. And I have found that the more that you do that's active, I mean, I know for myself, for my kids, they always want to hang out with me and do what I'm doing. So last summer we live on a lake, and
Mhm.
I bought paddle boards for us. So that's another activity that we have that we can do together, and they love it. And it's so much fun. And it's also, you're in nature. You definitely can't have a cell phone or a watch or a tablet with you
Right.
when you're paddleboarding. So it's great because you can talk and you're getting exercise, and you're outdoors
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. This is all such great stuff. One of the things I always ask my guests is, so what are two or three things? And I think we've certainly talked about them, but what would you say the most important two or three things is that you did that really helped you get you started or get you to where you are today?
I would say find someone who either is someone or maybe someone who you don't know, who can almost be your mentor,
Mhm.
near or far, who can help you with kind of giving you the aspiration to emulate. So
Okay.
that might be someone, online, if someone is using Instagram, finding a fitness coach that you can follow, who gives ideas, find someone that you can connect with, that you can learn from.
Mhm.
And that might be someone who you never will have a conversation with, or maybe it's someone in your life who
Mhm.
you're already talking to. I would say would be the first step. The second thing I would say is identify what you like to do and start with that. And that might just be walking. And maybe you like to walk. Maybe you have a treadmill, maybe you don't. You can walk anywhere. All you need is a
Mhm.
pair of sneakers.
Yep.
So identify that area of what you like to do. And that walking, once you walk enough, that might turn into running, or that might turn into, looking at maybe a bike or an elliptical trainer, or potentially joining a gym where you can experiment and try different, types of equipment that are there. And then I would say, lastly, the reward system works for me. It's always worked for my kids since they were babies, but for myself, if I hit a certain milestone, and I look at milestones from now as like a time amount. So I look at how much time did I spend exercising, what kind of activities did I do, and how much mileage did I run that week? Now, this is a little bit more advanced, but I would say identify, what types of milestones you want to reward yourself for, and then reward yourself. So that might be, rewarding yourself with, a matcha latte, or rewarding yourself with buying yourself a new blouse or a pair of shoes or whatever it is. I would also say, don't focus on how much you weigh and focus on how you feel, because the
Yes.
scale is definitely a liar and doesn't always tell you the full story. As I have learned from my trainer, it doesn't always tell you the full story.
Nope.
And muscle weighs much more than fat. So you should go by how you feel versus what the number is.
Agree. I like all of those, and I think that I think they're really valuable tools for anyone who is looking to get started or trying to elevate their fitness or health journey. I think all of those are fantastic. Melanie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed learning all about your story and you as a really super, because I see you a lot, and we've talked before, but just this really professional, highly successful woman. And to know that you've been able to build a lifestyle, you have a family, you have a lot of competing things going on, and yet you've been able to build a lifestyle to support your health goals. So congratulations for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
I really think that everyone will find a lot to take away from this. I certainly did. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions or comments or additional stories or topics that you would like me to explore, please reach out to me at GretchenHolmesPhD.com. You can also sign up for alerts and find additional really valuable information on the website. Of course, you can also find me on LinkedIn. But finally, from me to you, remember to love and celebrate yourself now, today. Don't wait until you feel worthy, because you already are. I truly believe the only way to good health is by loving ourselves. So be kind, give yourself some grace, but make sure that you're taking care of yourself, okay? And I know that you have a lot of options of podcasts and other shows that you can be listening to. So I want to say thank you for joining us today. I also want to remind you that the information on this podcast is not intended nor implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice. Until next time, take care.